on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. Now this woman went not once, but twice, 2 years in a row on the Freedom Flotilla. So these things really warm our hearts, and we feel a part of her, and we want to let her know she has a community here that watches her. If she makes some moves in the future in politics, we want to be behind her. So without any more ado, well, one other thing, she's also, controversy is nothing she's going to shy away from. She just came back from Libya as well. And we know there's a lot of things going on in Libya, so we're anxious to hear about that as well. So without further ado, I want a warm welcome for Congresswoman, our good friend, Cynthia McKinney.
That you got new friends. We cherish our old friends, and we love to make new friends, especially if you intend to run for office. You need some nice, hefty check writing. I understand that this evening there are several issues that are of interest to you. One of them happens to be redistricting. Well, I happen to know a little something about redistricting. Gaza, Libya, and Syria. And maybe I should add on here, under Libya, NATO, because this is very important. I'll start off with redistricting because there's a story to my redistricting story that very few people really know. Actually, I didn't know it myself until, how can I say, events came together to unveil certain hidden aspects of my travails that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. In 1992, I actually was in the Georgia legislature, and I worked on the House Reapportionment Committee. I served on the House Reapportionment Committee. And because Georgia is a state that comes under the jurisdiction of the Voting Rights Act, I intended to serve in the Georgia legislature for only 4 years, but I wanted to have a lasting impact on the politics. And the most effective way to do that is through the redistricting process. Redistricting and reapportionment, two different things. Reapportionment happens as a result of demographic changes as reflected in the census. And then based on those demographic changes, redistricting takes place so that the number of districts in a particular area reflects the population shift in that area. And it is because of reapportionment, we have 435 districts in the United States House of Representatives, and reapportionment after the census that tells us that Ohio has to lose 2 House seats because Ohio has lost approximately, that would represent about 1.3 or 4 million people. So, on the flip side of it is the state of Georgia that is gaining House seats and has consistently gained because the population that leaves Ohio and New York and Pennsylvania and other places actually comes down south. It comes to Georgia, that's right. And so in 1992, from my perch on the Georgia House Reapportionment Committee, I advocated the full application of the Voting Rights Act, which meant then that according to the way the Supreme Court had interpreted the Voting Rights Act at that time, if it was possible that protected communities could be represented, have an equal chance, not a more chance, but just an equal chance, a 50-50 chance of electing their candidate of choice, then that district had to be drawn in such a way as to facilitate that. And as a result, I advocated that that would mean 2 districts, additional districts, that would allow black voters in the 2 black belts of Georgia, which go east and then one goes south, to be able to elect their candidate of choice. At the time, I have been a perennial student. I was a PhD candidate at the time, and today I am still a PhD candidate, a perennial student at several institutions. Well, anyway, so my intention was not to run, but to allow for the kind of representation that the people of Georgia deserve. Well, anyway, as it turns out, when we went through the Department of Justice, that whole entire process that you are now going through, the only difference is that you don't qualify under the jurisdiction of the Voting Rights Act. So you have to rely on the goodwill of your legislature and your governor. And I don't think you can really count on very much goodwill. But at any rate, too bad for you. And, but you see, there are groups in this country who understand fully well that if you don't have a district, it is impossible to have representation. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us that the reason that we vote is ultimately for representation. It is not so that you can have a representative who wears a jacket of power. It is not so you can vote for somebody and then go to their office and take photographs with them. The purpose of our engagement in the political process is so that our values can be debated and treated with dignity, and on occasion actually win. That's why we engage in the political process. And Dr. King noted that when he said that it's not enough just for the Negro to have the right to vote, but the Negro must also have a reason for which to vote. Now, he didn't go into that whole thing about representative versus representation, but that's what he was talking about. And so, as an Arab American community in Cleveland, Ohio, you are concerned not with the exercise of going to the polls to vote. It's an insult to just go to the polls and vote. You want to be able to engage in politics by the very definition of politics, which is the authoritative allocation of values in a society. You want to have your values debated. You want to have your values represented in that place where politics occurs and policy is made. You want to see your values represented in the policy of your community. Whether it's the school board, the city council, the county commission, the state legislature, or the United States Congress. You want to see your values represented. Now, I oftentimes have been told, that I shouldn't say stuff. And I'm getting ready to say something that I shouldn't say. But I have been in audiences with my Arab American brothers and sisters, and I have warned them, do not follow the African American example. Why? Because the African American example is not one of full engagement in the political process for the purpose of acquiring power and making public policy. We have lost our way in that regard. When a particular political party can wear you in their back hip pocket, then you are not respected. Your vote is not respected. And so, now, having said that, I'll get back to redistricting, because my experience bears a direct relationship on what I believe might be happening now. So, I go into the Congress. Well, first of all, the campaign for the Congress to get in 1992 was something in and of itself. It was very informative for me, because I'm clearly a woman. And my father came up with a wonderful idea that we would put on our signs, "Why not a woman?" Because Georgia had not had a woman in its congressional delegation since like before I was born. And she was only the wife to the husband who had died in office. So we went with that theme. We had two things. One, why not a woman? And the other thing we had was warriors don't wear medals, they wear scars. And my campaign was comprised of the community warriors, the people who never get any kind of recognition. But because the district that I represented took me for the first time outside of Atlanta, I'm a city girl. But you know, Atlanta's like a little small town city compared to like New York City and all those other places. But still, I was viewed as an outsider. And I had to go into rural, what I call the heartland of Georgia, and shake hands with white farmers who, in the first place, didn't even look at their black counterparts in the city. They didn't even look them in the eye. And here I am, trying to be their representative. Wasn't no work. And that was difficult in and of itself. But the politics around the election was such that everybody knew I was going to lose. Well, they knew I was going to lose because what? It hadn't been done before. No black woman ever went to Congress from Georgia, so it wasn't going to happen. You can see the way I dress. I have a dress on. But back then, I always wore pants. I was a lot slimmer, so I always wore pantsuits. I had my natural hair. I have my thinking. And I wasn't going to change my thinking for nobody. They had this highfalutin Washington, D.C. consultant come down and tell me, well, now you got to change the way you dress, change the way you look, change the way you think, change everything about you. He was going to put me in one of those little frumpy blue, navy blue suits with a little frill blouse. That didn't work. And I was running against, there were two blacks in the race who had sold out the black community. And I told them, oh man, I was shaking like a leaf when I had to go to the debate, right? But my theme was that those two, and all the debates are in the white community. So those two had sold you out, had sold the black community out. And if they would sell out black people, just imagine what they'll do to you. Lord have mercy, it took a lot of courage to go and do that. But I did it, I had my little thing, and I did it. One of the persons who was supposed to win was a very wealthy white man. And